I think it's our intro, though. It's like a just like chill with friends kind of intro.
Well,
so.
I like those intros, but it has been pointed out by the podcasting
Hard
professionals
to edit.
that we should do something of an intro for our new broadcast watchers who are not quite so podcast savvy.
No,
Like, no.
limited exclusive audience. The fewer the better. If there's just one person watching, that's what I want.
What does it mean to have a human in the loop?
Human in the loop. Human in the loop. What in the world is a human in the loop? Human in the loop.
AI in the loop. Humans in charge.
Welcome to Human in the Loop.
This is Human in the Loop, where we break down AI and technology. Hamish has called it an education podcast masquerading. No, entertainment podcast masquerading as education. But I will introduce our guest. James Bergin is here with us from Xero. He is the Executive General Manager of Technology Research and Advocacy, leading emerging tech exploration, focusing on what small businesses can do with the best technology, strategic foresight, tech futures thinking. Maybe the best thing to kick us off is to explain what a tech research and advocacy person actually does.
Yeah, when I figure that out, I will absolutely let you know.
What's the acronym?
Tech Tra.
I mean,
Tra. James Bergin.
I got it down to the EGM of the EGM Tra.
Yeah.
Grim Tra. It's like
Yeah.
Fev.
It's a fantastic role. Like I love the role. Basically, it's looking at where technology is heading, and I like to say like beyond the planning horizon or the traditional planning horizon.
How long is that?
Well, because I think when you're looking at like futures work, if you look at 2 years, 3 years out, that's where we spend a lot of our time from a strategy standpoint anyway. If you're trying to stop yourself from predicting, I think you need to push out well past. So you need to try and go, 5, 10, 15 years, like try and look out further and then look for the weak signals of the kinds of futures that might be emerging and then go, okay, what do we want to do in the next 6 months, 12 months to try and shape the future that we want? So that's kind of my summary on strategic foresight and what I'm, get to do as part of the role. And then the advocacy part of the role is, I'd say it's multi-directional. I get to advocate for Xero to accountants and bookkeepers and people in small business. I get to advocate for them back into Xero. I get to advocate across different Xero teams as well. I basically get to go around and talk about all the great stuff we're doing and then talk about what people are doing with technology and what they might be able to do with technology in the future.
Have you all just looked at me with anticipation?
Yeah, Elena.
Have you been in that role always at Xero, or did you start in another role at Xero and moved into this?
Yeah, no, I've been at Xero coming up 7 years, and I've been in 4 different EGM roles. So I started as the EGM for engineering and architecture, and that was when we were a lot smaller than what we are now. And then I moved into the EGM of architecture and integration. And so the integration was as we were starting to do sort of mergers and acquisitions, but also how do we integrate new technologies and a bit more of the emerging tech side of things. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I moved into the EGM of technology strategy and integration, and then I moved into this role 2 years ago. Yeah, in fact, almost exactly 2 years ago. And so it's the first time in I think like 18 years that I'm not leading a team. It's which has its pros and cons. I've got no one that I can delegate stuff to, so I have to just do it myself.
Well,
yeah.
There's this thing called AI.
Yeah.
You might have heard of it.
Quite useful for some things. Can't really get up on stage very often and give a keynote, but that's okay.
They've been trying. There's a few robots that have gotten up on stage recently.
True. Yes, that's a good point. And if I wanted to get up and sort of do I could do like
Kung Fu,
there's some backflips and things like that. That would work out.
I was actually going to buy one of those. You want to go halvesies?
Halvesies. Yeah, sure.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it, so trying to spread my risk. You want to go with thirds? Are you it?
Absolutely.
Are you
not.
it on the Unitree?
Absolutely
Why
not?
not?
Invite a murder bot into my house. I would love to.
It's definitely not sending live video and audio back to.
Is this the point? Everyone just hold 3 fingers up in front of your face so we can convince you.
To remove the blur. To see how they blur. Yeah. So I mean, I really enjoy the role. I also think that because I spent so long in usually architecture, strategy, sort of innovation roles. To be in this role is like it feels almost like the culmination of previous years where they were all future oriented roles, and now it's like, okay, good, really lean in on that and see what you can do to help explore what it might be.
How soon do we want to go existential? Straight away?
This is where I live. I just found out from Neil Tyson deGrasse last night that there's evidence that our entire universe.
Who?
Neil deGrasse Tyson. I always get it backwards. I learned it wrong the first time. Then when you learn it wrong the first time. Anyway, there's clear evidence mounting evidence that we are a universe inside a black hole. Oh.
What I actually love about that is the way that you phrase it. It's like, what I learned from Neil last night, because we're having a chat.
Yeah. I'm a sales guy. What are you going to do?
I was talking to my Neil bot.
Yeah. Neil.ai. That's got to be a thing. Has anyone checked that domain? Anyway, sorry.
Well, the reason I was thinking existential is because the whole idea of future foresight, technology, futures in general, the horizon seems to be creeping closer. And on a good and optimistic day, it feels really exciting. And on a not so optimistic day, it's a little doom and gloom. So how do you walk that line? And what signals are you seeing that are super positive? Let's go positive first.
Let's go positive, sure. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask them to counter here. Let's go positive first.
Yeah, well, I think, so the way I look at that strategic foresight is you're not trying to, as I said, not trying to predict the future. You're trying to prepare for different kinds of futures and how things might pan out. And I think that I spent a lot of my career, I'll be honest, rolling my eyes a little bit when someone would say that they're a futurist or they describe themselves as a futurist. And that was because I didn't really know if there was any structure or frameworks that were going behind that title. And so when I got into this role and I was like, well, hang on a second, now I'm kind of being asked to do this kind of work. Let me go see if there is, again, some structure or some discipline. And that's where I landed on some of the strategic foresight, some great work being done out of Imperial College in London and University of Houston. And some of these programs, like the University of Houston programs, we're running for like 50 years. So it's not something which was like a fly-by-night thing. One of the things that they say is you're not doing science fiction when you're doing strategic foresight. Science fiction's for entertainment. What you're trying to do is scenarios. And scenario planning is actually something that's baked into strategy and operations and has been for a long time. So really it's trying to, again, look for those signals and go, okay, of the futures that could emerge, which is the future that we want? Like, what's the future we want to go towards? And then how do you take some action to point towards it? And that played in really well to the kind of architect in me, architect kind of engineer, where it's like, how do I build the future that I want or shape the future that I want? And so I look at a lot of the signals that are coming out, particularly those kind of weaker signals about, you go horizon 2 or 3 sort of signals. And, we're talking about robotics, or you see some of the stuff around quantum, or you see some of the potential for us to solve some really big, wicked problems. There's a lot more content about fusion than there has been for a long time. You're starting to see some promises maybe of some breakthroughs on the horizon. So the opportunities, the signals that maybe point to more of an abundant future are pretty exciting. And so I think that if you go far out, you go, oh, that could be amazing. Okay, now how do we get there from here to there? Because the transition is always the tricky part.
The hardest thing about it is like there's this wave, like with computer vision, there was like this bet of like, hey, we should invest in AI and use AI and develop AI. But my understanding of AI at the time was very much machine learning, not deep learning. And even deep learning was kind of like a progression of machine learning, right? And it's just funny how it hits home eventually, but not the way that you thought it would.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Kodak inventing the digital camera. They invented that future, and then it just swallowed them up in a way that they probably didn't really plan for or couldn't really see coming. So it'd be interesting to think about any predictions while we're talking that you made that came true, but not in the way that you thought.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes the time scale's off. And I think some of it is about the nature of the organization or the strategy that you're maybe coming up with that research. So the Kodak example is a great one. I had the opportunity years ago to have actually lunch with the guy who was heading up digital imaging at the time when Kodak was creating the camera. He was at Google at this point. And he was talking about at the time, Kodak was divided into 2 divisions, picture taking and picture making. And what he was saying is like this digital camera kind of fit in both, and it didn't fit in either. And it became really like, where does it fit? Which is kind of Clay Christensen's innovator's dilemma. Like, we've got this thing, but we don't quite know what it does to the traditional businesses. And so I think with a lot of those, if I think back to my time like in banking, financial services, some of the predictions, I remember giving a presentation that was on the future, the future of banking in 5 years' time. And then I was still at the bank 5 years later. And so myself and my colleague who was the head of strategy, who had been involved on the project, we're like, okay, let's actually look at how far off were we, and gave ourselves a scorecard, and kind of did another presentation as part of an internal conference. And a number of the things, we were pretty right, we were pretty accurate. A number of them, this is 5 years in, we were off on timing. But to do like Amara's law, that people overestimate what can happen in a short period of time and underestimate what can happen in a long period of time. And I think, it was Bill Gates who summarized that as like overestimate in 2, underestimate in 10. If you look at it in a 10-year window, we were far more accurate, because just some of the things like natural language understanding.
Yeah.
This was right at the very beginning of when the iPhone was starting to be used, and Siri was just there, and that was kind of all we had.
Siri looked amazing. I remember the first demo, I was like, how did they get the recognition so good?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you're like,
And
what?
then now it's like, how is the recognition so bad?
But you would see this kind of sense of like the conversational interaction piece, which for me felt like a far out prediction, because I've told this story before. Like I'm old enough to remember using Dragon Naturally Speaking 1.0.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And to use that voice dictation software, you had to read these paragraphs of training, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes of training it on your voice. And of course, all of it's training at the time. This was cutting edge stuff, but it didn't understand Kiwi or kind of Kiwi Aussie blend or whatever my accent is.
Yeah.
So I had to find myself, putting on a terrible American, accent in order for it to understand me as I was reading certain parts of the paragraph. From that to having a chat with Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or whatever you like in your car while you're driving, and it fully understands what you're saying, it's Star Trek type
And
stuff.
yet still requires you to unlock your phone.
While parked.
While parked is correct. Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? Like, yeah, unintended side effects of technology, and like leapfrogging. Tesla going for FSD, and then that huge wave of automakers trying to go for FSD. It looks like now they're going to just be surpassed by autonomous robots getting in your car and driving them. And I was just like, oh, didn't see that coming. Same tech,
Yeah.
just manifested a completely different way.
Well, this is this thing. Like, do you focus on building world models for AI software to understand the world? Do you? And if you do, we've still built the world around human interaction, right? This is with humanoid robotics, you sit there and go, yeah, well, we've got a steering wheel that's designed for a human to steer it. So why don't you get in there and steer it? Versus, do we make the steering wheel steer itself? Like, it's this interesting trade-off around, well, which future do we prefer out of those two?
Although one of George Hotz's startups that I think is shut down now, like that came out a couple of years after Tesla full self-driving, was a sensor package that he was targeting at specific cars, because a lot of cars actually have a lot of the steer-by-wire stuff in them, right? Like if you connect to the right part of the CAN bus, you can turn the steering wheel and you can accelerate and brake just with electrical signal. And so what he sold was like basically a sticky camera that you stuck onto the inside of your windscreen that had all of the AI gear and connect it into your CAN bus, and it would drive the car. So unlike like a house, which is often not even designed for people, like it's just, why is there a stair here?
Yeah.
Well, because I want to see what it looks like when you fall over at 3 a.m. in the morning. But like, unlike it, like a lot of spaces, a car is already somewhat ready for automation.
At a level of automation.
A level of automation.
Yeah. I mean, I remember having a conversation with some of the guys at Waymo, and this is going back a few years now. And they were talking at the time how there was basically these two streams of thought about the best way to get to autonomous or full self-drive. And it was like, on one side, it was back the hardware, back the software to be able to figure it all out. On the other side, it was back the hardware. And so when you get in the Waymos now, you see like they've got the LiDAR and the radar and all the sensors. And it's like, if they win, if they totally nail it, they still have a journey to get to miniaturize that and reduce the cost and get it to a point where it's in everyday cars. Whereas if the software can win, then they can automatically scale across the entire fleet. And so it's this really interesting race, but they're like running on two different tracks in the same race. And it's like, well, who's going to win? It's fascinating to watch.
And Tesla's much more of that software drive, right? Like Elon has very famously said he doesn't want to put LiDAR in his cars, that optical cameras are good enough for humans, so they should be good enough for full self-driving as well.
It doesn't even put rain sensors on the windscreen wipers, it wants the camera to figure out whether it's raining, which can be hit and miss.
Yeah.
At the moment, anyway.
A self-driving car, though, is expected to be better than a human.
It is, but it's the same thing with AI. It's like when it'll be like person, plot by person. Like it's when it's wrong, it's so far wrong. So if you take the error envelope for a human, the deviation, like it's basically your standard error. Your standard error categorization for a human is much like more contained. So if you make a mistake and you flinch and turn the steering wheel and misrecognize something, your range of error scenarios is much more predictable for a human. Whereas machine learning, because there's so many parts of it that are non-deterministic, it'll just like fly off the handles, which is not the case. Like that guy that got decapitated playing a Nintendo, we can argue later whether he deserved it or not. Yeah, he was basically like playing Nintendo, and the Tesla saw the back of a
Playing Nintendo in his Tesla.
In his Tesla, sorry.
Oh, okay. So we've got some more context.
Yeah, that started off as an A24 horror film trailer. Play Nintendo, get decapitated. Start again. So this guy was playing Nintendo in his Tesla, I believe.
Okay.
And he wasn't paying attention, and the Tesla was on full FSD, and there was like a van truck that it miscategorized because the white glare saturated the camera lens. And it basically just didn't see it, and he went straight onto it. And the top of the car came off. So he's either playing Nintendo or asleep, one of those two things, right? A human, in the event of a glare situation, in a million years probably wouldn't just keep going. And they probably wouldn't just keep going at the same speed. They would have actually just sort of like, there's some confusion going on. I don't know what the confusion is, but I'm going to slow down or pull over to the side or pop down the visor or do something to improve the visibility, right? Whereas with the software at that stage, which was like 5 or 6 years ago, it was so sure there was nothing there. It didn't do anything. It just piled straight through. That's
partly to Elena's point, that's partly our expectation of AI too, right? Like if your car just slowed down to a crawl, you wouldn't go, oh, it's probably struggling to, see through glare or haze, or, it's confused about some visual artifact. So this is fine, and I accept it and understand it. I'm not angry. You would be like, goddamn car, why aren't you just going the right speed?
Why is my magic less magic?
Why is my magic? Yeah, exactly.
I think you coined that phrase.
Yeah.
When ChatGPT came out, it was like incredible. And then like for like 2 or 3 months later, the next model dropped, and everyone was complaining. It was way more accurate, but way slower.
Yes.
And everyone was complaining that it was slow. And Hamish was just like, man, people are weird. Like, this is complete magic. Like, it's just complete voodoo that a computer can do what this model is doing. And people are now already complaining that their magic is less magic.
I love that. I'm so going to take that.
It's a discredited comedian, Louis C.K.
Yeah,
Louis C.K.
I knew it. I was like, Louis C.K.
Yeah. The one that we can still mention, he's just discredited, not evil
cancel.
Former comedian, now general bastard. But just regular cancelled Louis C.K.
Yeah.
Said something very similar earlier, like in one of his sketches where he was like, he was waiting for a plane, and it was just in the days when planes had just started to get Wi-Fi.
Right.
And so he'd gotten on the plane, and the air hostess came over the tannoy and said, this is one of the planes that has just been equipped with Wi-Fi, but I'm sorry to tell you that it's not working today. And one of the guys in the seat in front of him went, I can't believe it. He's like, you didn't even know the thing existed 30 minutes ago, and now you're disappointed that it's what you should be doing is for the entire flight going, holy fuck, we're in the sky, hey everybody, we're flying
at Mach 1.
And
there's a satellite above us that's beaming the whole internet into the cabin.
I like that. It's magic is less magic, because the Arthur C. Clarke quote, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
And I think that the expectation shift that's been needed is you're 100% right when people look at the technology that they're using day to day, and it just becomes part of how we use it all the time. I have been guilty of being on a flight and going, I can't believe the Wi-Fi is slow, and not sort of saying I'm going, 30,000 feet at, hundreds of miles an hour, and I have access to Wi-Fi. I'm like, why is it so slow? And it's almost like this creep that comes into our lives. And when you say, I used to think this was magic, and now I'm just moving on, waiting for the next thing. And I think on AI, particularly on the large language model kind of evolution, revolution, whatever you want to call it, I've said to few people, like we didn't even take the win. Like
No.
understanding human language that's a massive win.
Not only in writing, vocally,
Like
like
multimodal.
visually. Yeah.
And then but we jump straight into when's superintelligence coming? When is this thing going to solve all the problems? Is it PhD level maths that I can get for like fractions of a cent on the token? Like, is that what we're getting? Because I'm not that impressed that it can understand me anymore. So I every now and then I think it's good to sort of the question about predictions. It's good to look at sci-fi and look at predictions and things like that and go, yeah, okay, maybe we had the timing off.
Yeah.
But we're here in this amazing, incredible time. We can do all these incredible things. We can unlock all these things for people in business, people at home. That's amazing.
You know, not taking the win, that is like what Silicon Valley is doing right now with, you know, Jack Dorsey laying off 4,000 people in a profitable company because he's like, some bullshit about the future's coming. And I'm like, bro, it's not here yet. Like, you're profitable. Why? Like, it's so...
What they say out
it's
loud
so
is not
weird.
what they mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you could
yeah.
tell that straight away. He was just like, hey, profit, more profit.
Well, although you do get an echo chamber building up, especially in Silicon Valley, right? Like you'll probably have more exposure to this than me. I only have secondhand exposure through YouTube people. But there is like a culture building in Silicon Valley of like, you've got to grind, you've got to build your AI thing, because if you are not on the tip of this AI wave, you will be permanent underclass, right? Like there's quite a big thing of like, if you're not on that AI tip, that's it. Like there's going to be it's massive separation between the people who the AI lifts up into this new land of utopia and the entire rest of the population. And so if you believe that, then being like, yeah, it makes sense to, you know, why would I carry all these people with me into the promised land if getting rid of them gives me this booster rocket to heaven? Then
yeah, that's the thing that I couldn't resolve with his statement, right? Like if I was in his position, which I'm clearly not, if you had an entire company,
you can still grow quite a nice beard.
Oh, thanks, man. It's the billions of dollars that's the problem. Just in case it was wondering. But like, if you had a staff of 10,000 people and you're going up against Visa and MasterCard, which has hundreds of thousands of people, right? Not only are they going to be slower to adopt AI and like evolve because they're much tighter, more intricately linked in the regulatory environment, you could, instead of cutting those jobs, you could change their job descriptions because of AI. So there's like an inherent contradiction in what he's saying, because if he truly believed AI was incredible, you still need people to operate it for the time being, right? Like at least in a year or 2 years. You didn't need to cut straight away. So wouldn't it make more business sense to double down on the staff that you've got and just tell them all of their jobs have changed and then maximize your output rather than like cut back, eat shit for like, because we all know, you know, I mean, when you're using an iPhone, it still can't copy paste properly. Like, you know, like you're like hold down a piece of text and it pops up the thing, and sometimes copy's there and sometimes it's not. And then when it is, you click copy and then it appears on your Mac and you're like, no, I didn't want to paste it there. I just wanted to paste it in this PDF, which I can't sign. And you tap that and you let go, and then the paste thing doesn't come up. And you're like, clear evidence AI's not really going to take everybody's job tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Like we can't get some of the most basic shit right.
Yeah.
And these guys are out there selling this Kool-Aid, and it's just full of contradictions. And it was just kind of gross because it's setting a really bad example, because, you know, people idolize successful entrepreneurs, especially like Dorsey, you know, like the guy spits out good ideas and he does have execution. And when he does something like that, you know, it kind of validates the next guy doing it, and the next guy, and the next guy, and the next guy. Let's face it, they're all guys. But yeah.
If you'll allow me
Yes, please.
to grab the steering wheel of this conversation and take it from there into maybe what is more achievable and relatable, which is small business, which is what Xero specializes in. They're not laying off hundreds of thousands of people, I imagine, because of AI. But what are you seeing in the small business community or small to medium business in New Zealand? Let's maybe lay that out first. Is it up to a 250 people? What's the classification of businesses?
20 in New Zealand.
20?
20 is
It's
so
small.
cute. In America, it's 500.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, 97% of New Zealand businesses below 20 headcount.
What's an average Xero business look like?
Well, I think it changes depending on the markets that we're in, because what is considered small or what's considered medium is very different in the different markets. But I think that, when you look globally, it's that 98% of businesses are considered small or small to medium. And I think that your kind of question, and I think that when it's looking at like how they're using AI or how they're using these tools, for me it's the evolution of technology more broadly. It's not like many small businesses that I talk to, it's not like they get out of bed and go, great, what new tech am I going to deploy today? And 5 years ago, kind of questions I was getting asked about was all blockchain and NFTs and crypto. 4 years
How's
ago,
that going?
4 years ago it was all 4 years, about 4 years ago it was all the metaverse. People were asking all about the metaverse, right? And then AI came on the scene. My point is not to say that these things are all equivalent, but it's just that new technology comes online all the time, because the word just means the practical application of scientific knowledge. And so if you're someone who's in a small business, what you're looking to try and do is run your small business, and then you're looking to the tools, the techniques, the technologies that are out there to help you do that. And depending on what business you're in, that's what I find so amazing about small businesses around the world. The amount of ingenuity, the amount of just innovation, the amount of grit that's in these organizations. They also run the full gamut, from someone who's in services to producing products. So when we look at it through the lens of like, how is AI going to help someone in small business, it's like, well, it depends on what kind of business they're in, depends the problems that they're facing day to day. And again, I just come back to that, me being an architect, I'm like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? How does this technology unlock capabilities that could help you solve that problem? So if you're in a place where you've got a whole lot of the problem that you're trying to address is you've got a whole lot of kind of toilsome tasks that aren't critical to why you got into business, but they take up your time, and your time is the one asset that we haven't figured out how to magically bend or extend.
Believe Neil will get there.
Neil will get there. Neil will find a way. But so then, are there things where you can offload some of that toil? And it's in the same way, again, the whole journey of computization has been that, right? It's been to say, well, now I can offload some of the stuff that was taking up time or mental load, and I can now use these new tools to do it. For others, it's about growth. How do I grow? And so what's the ability for me to scale? And is there ability to scale my impact, or to scale the number of customers I can reach? Are there ways where I can reach people in new languages? So I think a lot of it comes down to what kind of business are they in, what problems are they facing, and then what capabilities are the ones that are coming online. One of the problems of the current world is we just say AI, and what we mean is a whole raft of different technologies and capabilities, machine learning included. And I think that can sometimes muddy the water a little bit.
Yeah, I think your advice around take the win, I think that's the most applicable advice for small to medium businesses, right? Like I see these big transformation projects tabled, and it's like, probably just need Copilot and a few hours of YouTube. Like that'll be a game changer.
Just stop using Excel for literally everything in your business.
Well, we find we'll find when we've rolled out things in the Xero platform, new capabilities. Like we didn't wake up to AI with the release of some of the large language models. Xero turns 20 this year. And so the journey in AI and machine learning and deep learning and data science has been ingrained in Xero almost from the get-go. But if we look at like some of the things that we've done more recently, like automated bank reconciliation is a good example. So we'll just go handle all that for you. Don't worry about it. No. This is what's been done. Here you go, have a look. You can see that this recommendation was because of your previous thing that you've did, and we've taken the pattern. This is one that we've done based on a prediction. This is one based on a rule. So we call it sort of accountable intelligence, to try and say, how do we show you the working of what's being
Did
done?
marketing come up with that? That's really nice.
That's really nice. Accountable.
Shout out
We should
Xero marketing
we should have
team.
came up with that.
I heart you, Xero marketing team. I have long
Accountable.
admired what they do.
Jack Dorsey does not believe in accountable intelligence.
Well, it's something that comes at the core when you're thinking about business and you're thinking about finances, and these are not the places where hallucination is a feature. It's definitely a bug, right? Like, because I would say in a creative process, like if you're turning to any one of these models and you're saying, give me 5 different ways of how I could frame this, or give me some different ways of how I could start the blank page, solve the blank page problem. I don't know where to start. Hallucination's a feature, not a bug. You're asking for creativity in different, ways you haven't thought about it. Not so much when you're wanting to, balance the books. So we'd look at it and deploy that capability in a way which is explainable. And then it's about, that small business that's using Xero is using AI, but they're just using Xero, and Xero is using AI in helping them do it.
It's one of the core problems of the deep learning models is, you're right. Hallucination is not just a value. It's like baked into the model, because part of the point is to be creative.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not looking for just the next word, the statistically most likely next word.
Yeah.
You're looking for some level of creativity, and some level of creativity will come with some level of creativity around facts as well as about text.
I know this is a wild oversimplification, but I was talking about this actually with some accountants and bookkeepers when I was in Australia recently, and I said some of this is about our expectations with computers, because we're used to, or being told for a long time, that when we ask a computer what is 1 + 1, it calculates that the answer is 2. We're asking these models, what's 1 + 1? And they're saying, well, it's probably 2. But it could also be window, it could be 11, kind of depends on the context, right? Let me go write a Python script to calculate it for you. And that's going back to traditional computing. Our expectation, our mindset, when it's in the kind of ungrounded public models that are out there that aren't connected, that there's no RAG, there's no connection back to my data, my context, you're asking a probabilistic question, a non-deterministic question, and we are not very good with that. Like, we're just not good with probabilities as a species.
The first thing humans will try and do is split things into 2 classes.
There you go. And we're just trying to get to the point where it's an exact precision, and in a lot of these things it's still left to probabilities, which if you then put it in the creative sphere, fantastic. Like, different ideas, different things. Oh, that's crazy. Why didn't I think of that? Let's try some different things. So I think it comes back to what problems are people trying to solve, and then how do you then use this technology in a way that's going to help you solve the problem, not use the technology because the technology is there.
Well, that ties into like one of the myths or the desires that people have for AI that makes it so interesting, and like I think drives part of the demand, right, is people want just a machine that can do everything for them, right? Like I've seen people go to ChatGPT and type in what's like 200 minus 11. It's like, that is a terrible way to do that, right?
Oh my
Like,
God, the CO2 emissions, the
yeah,
water usage.
Exactly.
Like,
your computer can calculate that in microseconds.
you can calculate
with,
that in microseconds.
The power you can get from a lemon and a copper bar, right? And instead, you've connected to like $1 trillion investment in the largest data centers in the world and burnt like $7 in power and $3 in GPUs to get the answer wrong because it's doing a predictive analysis. But the reason they're doing that is because they just want one interface that they can just go to and say, this is the thing I want. I'm not even being particularly specific about the thing I want. Figure it out and tell me the answer.
Yeah.
And a machine that could, like AGI, that's the thing we want, right? Like, humans want to be able to be lazy.
Do you reckon the engineer that put in the expression, the math evaluation cache in ChatGPT got a massive pay raise?
No, I think that he probably, I mean, it's still Silicon Valley, so he might have put it in his promotion packet, and then they decided that it didn't have enough attributable revenue to it, so it didn't qualify.
Yes,
And
only
then-
saved money and carbon emissions and energy.
I think it's a testament to how imbued our lives have become with digital technology, that we're at the point where that expectation is even there.
Yeah.
That I should be able to turn to this magic box or this magic piece of glass, or I should just be able to ask into the ether and get the response to any question that I possibly have. I remember watching what was the show where they had How I Met Your Mother.
Oh yeah,
How I Met Your Mother, and they did a thing at the start of it where they're like, what it used to be like before phones, and they're at the bar and they have this total argument over like what's the most popular food in America, and they're arguing about it, and they get into this whole thing, and then it goes after mobile phones, and they're all sitting at the same bench, and he goes, hey, remember that thing about the food? Yeah, it's bread. And the others go, huh? And then he goes, closes the opening. But it's the sense of like, I think this is actually posing a whole bunch of really interesting questions to us when we sort of go far future. Just because we can doesn't necessarily mean that we should with some of these technologies, both for the reasons that you're talking about, but also more broadly. Actually, the journey of discovery, the journey of learning, serendipity, all these kind of things that are, I think, critical to the human experience, means asking the bigger question about, well, actually, what problem am I trying to solve? And does this help me solve it? Is a very important step to then figuring out whether or not we should use the technologies in that particular way.
It's an interesting point about the phones, because it's sometimes interesting. I watch quite a few old movies, and often the plot kind of doesn't make sense with a modern sensibility.
Right.
Because you're just like, none of this would happen if you just picked up your phone and,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, wait, right.
Oh yeah, they don't have
can't do
phones.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's interesting to think, like,
Yeah.
what are people going to think when they watch movies of today?
All the trope
10
is,
years
oh,
in-
I've got no signal.
Yeah.
Plot continues.
Plot continues.
Or phone gets crushed.
Yeah, they
It's
have
like,
to come up with some Deus Ex Machina way to destroy the phone.
Yeah.
So
we had
thinking
to
of those-
explain to our teenagers when we were out driving once and we ran out of signal and GPS sort of stopped working, and I kind of laughed and said to my wife, "Oh, we probably have to get the map book out." And my teenager's like, "What's a map book?"
Yeah.
And we're like, "Well, before GPS and CarPlay and everything else, we used to have." Street maps, and you used to have to look them up and everything else. And my teenage daughter was like, "But what happens when they added new roads?" You get a new map book. Like, that's just the thing.
A year later,
And it's like,
you take a wrong turn and realize you've got the old map.
that's right. Now it's a dead end.
And now you've got a puncture and it's dark and you don't know where you are.
Yeah, and you spend 2 hours arguing about whether you should ask someone, but you both feel socially awkward to do it, so you just drive around for hours.
We probably not presuming any vintages here, but I would assume that all of us probably were at a point where in our stationery list at school was you had to have a dictionary and a thesaurus and an atlas. This was stuff like this. And prior to that, parents' generation, it was like a slide rule. And so there's these things where it kind of creeps in, but then expectations match. And now you're at the point where, like, I don't care that I have a supercomputer in my pocket. I want to understand why the magical piece of glass can't do this new thing that's being promised to me. And I think that's, especially for people in technology, like when we've had careers in it and you've been able to sort of see the epochs and the change, it's taking a bit of a break and going, whoa, look where we are now. And, the thing in AI, but the capability overhang, the capabilities that are there right now that you can leverage right now to do amazing things. Look at that. And then, there's more stuff coming. But actually just the stuff we've got is huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you guys watch this show called The Pit?
I haven't yet, no.
I haven't started watching it. This is no. Is it
Yeah,
Noah
it's
Wyle?
an ER
Yeah.
show. Without
I always remember him as Steve Jobs in Pirates of Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh yeah, he's really good. It's a really good show. If you can stomach quite the graphic trauma, there's an episode in season 2. I don't think this is a spoiler, where they have spoiler warning, a cybersecurity event, and they have to start using manual triaging, writing things on whiteboards, using clipboards and paper, and it makes me wonder, like, kids, accountants, anyone going into a job, have you learned the skill that you're expected to do without the technology?
Well, it's not even necessarily that. We now rely on the capacity that the new technology provides. Like that even if you can do the
Like
job,
turnaround times
you
and stuff,
physically can't do as much of it as you need to for the expectations and the ways that, like you can see it in the news playing out now, right? Like there would not be a problem with petrol if we weren't using all of the petrol that we were producing all of the time. And yes, we have fallback methods. People could use bikes and walk around and things, but we've just designed expectations to match
100%.
peak capability.
100%.
Yeah.
So do you all think we've passed the point of fucking ourselves as a species in terms of technology? Like we've gone too far?
Hey, Elena, you did the thing.
Yeah.
3 minutes in, 52 minutes, 39 minutes in. That's a record. Elena usually
De-escalation
takes
point.
it. Like just
if you're asking the question of like, could we survive with the current population if we had like 100-year technology regression? That already was not a thing like 50, 100 years ago. We're already in situations where, like in America at the moment, people can't walk from where they live to where there is food before they starve to death.
What?
yeah, the traveling salesman. Someone did that using computation. Basically, there are parts of America where
They've food
They
deserts.
Food deserts, right.
Yeah.
There are also tech deserts, Wi-Fi deserts.
I think the thing about when we look at that and we look at like what's happening to us as a species and the planet and conflict and that is unfortunately been part of the human condition since the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I think the nature of is the scale, is the impact, is our awareness heightened, is there the ability to scale up some of the challenge? Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's also, to your point around trying to be a pragmatic optimist, I think it also scales up the opportunity for us to solve some of the problems. So when we talk about the fact that there are some parts of the world where people, if they didn't have the technology they have today, those parts would basically be uninhabitable, inhospitable. But they're not, because we have the tech that we have available today. If we get to the stage with the tech, if we can line things up the right way, we could unlock more desalination or more irrigation, all these kind of things. You start to say, well, actually the world's resources don't necessarily need to be finite as we kind of understand them today if we can use the technology to unlock a type of future where it's a different energy equation. It's like a different use of the tech. So that's the stuff that gets me out of bed in the morning. It's like, yeah, but I think that we can actually, with these things, we can unlock a future that we prefer. How we do that, now that's the conversation worth having, because it's never clear cut. It's never smooth sailing to get to the ideal future.
There's a good example. I think it's the Haber or the Haberman process. No, it was a process that's came up with an efficient way to produce nitrogen fertilizer. Because there was like a point where I think in like the 1920s, when scientists were like, we're kind of reaching peak global population. We don't see how topsoil can't, produce food for the number of people we have anymore. And so, we were farming as intensively as we could, and we were starting to see crop failures. And we were like, we kind of think this might be it. This is as big as the world can get. And then there was just this one guy who figured out this process that managed to create nitrogen fertilizer, and now our farms are like 10 or 20 times more productive because of this one process. And all of the population we have now would not be supportable without that one technical breakthrough. Now, we are incredibly dependent on that. And so one of the things that's not currently shown up from the current conflict is that it's not the restriction on the Strait of Hormuz is not just restricting oil, it's also restricting fertilizer and the inputs to that process, so natural gas and things like that. And so the restriction to fertilizer is probably as bad for the global economy. You just don't see it yet because there are stocks of fertilizer around, right? But if you go and watch the news about, like, they go to talk to all the farmers and they're like, so what do you think about the price of fuel? And they're like, well, it's bad, but what I actually care about is that it's costing me 10 times as much to buy the fertilizer. And without that, my farm just doesn't work. Like the processes that we have to run these farms, we're driving the soil too hard. If you don't have that fertilizer input, you just couldn't produce anywhere near what we're producing.
Yeah, the irony of I'm Sri Lankan, so I can take the piss.
Yeah.
But Sri Lanka's dry run this entire scenario like 4 or 5 years ago, caused by COVID and gross mismanagement.
Yeah.
They made some, when COVID hit, they basically had to flip the economy, and some idiot made a call to change from regular fertilizer to organic fertilizer, and they didn't give the farmers enough time to switch. So they ran out of fertilizer, which then snowballed into a economic GDP crisis, which then snowballed into a debt crisis, which then prevented them from having enough foreign cash reserves to buy fuel, which then spiraled into a fuel crisis. So both of the things that you're talking about, Sri Lanka managed to create a simulation sandbox for everyone to observe.
Is it simulation if you just do it?
If you just do it to yourself, if it's an own goal, I'm not sure. But it's pretty fascinating how it spiraled into massive inflation, fuel rationing, a whole bunch of stuff. And actually there was a good set of technological solves for managing the chaos. And I think it was reported in the media as quite bad, and then it was bad, but people were making do, and that's the resiliency and the, people kind of just adapt. It goes both ways. So when you have like this wonderful technology and this wonderful dependency on this magical technology, that's great because you adapt and expect more from it, right? But humans are particularly resilient the other way as well. So when a situation gets as bad as you can potentially think it gets, surprising, but humans kind of just go, it's Tuesday. Guess I'll do whatever I can today, and they just keep grinding, right?
That's it. They poured hope in Pandora's box.
Yeah, I was trying to turn around your escalation.
Oh yeah, we're back to optimistic.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to add, there was quite a spike in violence. It wasn't just like everyone kumbaya'd and got together and figured out how to make food.
No, but James said that's normal, so it's normal. That's just a Tuesday morning.
I think you do get to a point, right? Necessity is the mother of all invention. You look what like innovation itself. There's a lot of. I've always come back to the definition of the word means to create something new in order to change something established. And so it's not just creating something new, that's invention, but using it in a way that changes something established is where innovation really comes in. And so I think that the opportunity in front of us when we've got so many of these, it's not like we're running out of problems. We're not running out of, everything's fine, everything's sorted. It's kind of Star Trek utopia. We're not there, and I don't know if we ever will get there, because I do think that conflict or disagreement or division is part of the human condition. So we don't want to take the human component out of the world. What we want to try and do is, I think, find ways to bridge the division, bridge the conflict. And technology can play a role in that. It can change some of the calculus around what's a resource of desire and what's something which actually is plentiful, and what does that start to look like. That's what's in front of us. And so it's just a challenge, I think, to all of us, whether it's individuals or small businesses or big businesses or countries, to look at it through that lens, not just always through the lens of, it's all too hard, and whatever year I'm in, I can give you a whole bunch of bad signals of how things are not great. So finding the good signals and then sharing those, I think, becomes the mindset shift that's required as well.
Change of tack.
Sure.
Xero, big enterprise now. Obviously deals with a customer base that is B2B and smaller businesses. But you guys must be going through an AI transformation. Surely you've got troves of data and permission to use it. I've seen Jax and a few other things, but from the outside looking in, it looks like those features have been very slow to come. Understand that the regulatory environment makes it a little tricky and stuff, but I think it'd be interesting to hear what the process that you guys have been going through to figure out your transformation, because I'm very confident you're thinking about it. And also, how are you handling, existential threats like getting sort of accounting advice from Claude, which does hallucinate. And, the number of times I've been like, filling gaps and just trying not to waste my accountant's time with like a silly question. And then going, but what about this? And it goes, oh, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that. And and so it's still in a place where it still adds a lot of productivity to me, but I still need my accountant. I still need my lawyer. But that will eventually change, right?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot in that.
Yep.
There's a lot to unpack.
Go.
So I think in terms of, because I thought that was like a setup to have a conversation about our recently announced partnership with Anthropic.
Oh, look at that.
So there was a setup in there somewhere.
Who knew?
So because we have just literally just recently announced a partnership with Anthropic, and what that is to bring both Claude capability into Xero, but also Xero into Claude, because I think that sense of what you're talking about around I was saying before, the ungrounded conversations with some of these models, when it's going to its training set or going to what it can get online, but it's not connected to your context, to the reality of your business and how you operate and what that has, which of course is what Xero has. We built it up over many, many years, 20 years this year. We're 20 years old. And so there's us coming to the party with how do we leverage the best capabilities that can help with some of the agentic workflows and reasoning and things like that, coupled with the data that you have, that we have, and that we can sort of share in a way that always with you in control, but in a way that can unlock those capabilities. I think the question you're asking about our own internal transformation, this is something which, if you take a random Xero and you kind of ask them, hey, how much are you using AI in your daily work? You'll get a long list, right? Like most people, I assume, are trying to leverage the best of those capabilities involved, right? Whether it's helping them marketing teams or engineering or, the sales teams, like how do they leverage these capabilities in a way that can help them do more, reach more people, release more code, all those kind of aspects feature. You're talking about the pace of how we then roll that into things like Jax, or how we roll that into...
Well, you're dealing with the compliance environment. There are elements of legacy to your business.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of customers, enterprise customers that we deal with, that's, you go 400 times faster on the code, but then you're waiting for Dave to approve something for like 3 days because he's on annual leave. Well, it's like, we gotta wait for an email chain before I can actually do the next step, kind of thing. So those interlocking choke points.
It's classic systems thinking, right? I was having this conversation with some colleagues just a few weeks ago, and they were talking about vibe coding and, hey, look, you can unlock all this new technology and you can just, you can quickly create the system of record over a weekend. And I'm like, no, you can't. They're like, yes, you can, because the code. And I'm like, systems thinking kind of 101. A system is people, process, and technology. So we're seeing these big upticks in what we can do with some of the technology. We then need to be thinking about the processes that we have and what those processes expect in terms of returns and whether Dave's on leave or not. And then the people themselves, which is a critical part of any system, in my opinion, worth investing in terms of your time and your energy and things like that. So I think that there's this sense of, I said before about the architect in me, right? It keeps coming back to what's the problem you're trying to solve. And just because the technology's come online doesn't mean it needs to be deployed. And in our case, like our vision, we have it right up there to be the most trusted and insightful. It's not like the most insightful and then we just don't talk about the trust. So for us, because the trusted is up there, we always think about it through that lens. Yeah, we've built trust. We've built that platform that people in small business and their advisors can use and can trust. We don't want to throw any of that away. So it means being careful and cautious about where we use the right capabilities. But also we're knocking out more and more capabilities as those capabilities mature, more and more product features, more and more ability for more and more people to access those capabilities as they best need them as well.
Good answer.
Thanks. I mean, I work alongside and connect in with a lot of our incredible people in our product and technology teams, and I'm not in that function anymore. I'm in the strategy team now. But when I sort of look at the work that they're doing and the way that they are fixated on the customer and fixated on how can this stuff be leveraged in a way that can help them, it's incredible to see. And so that is constantly looking at new ways to do things, but at the same time looking at it in the lens of what problems are people wanting solved.
Does Xero have an autonomous robot program?
Just like
just
an
curious
one.
Yeah,
I can't possibly comment on future roadmap plans or.
Is that like a little roadmap that goes and collects your debts?
Yeah.
it's a Bender robot. Like it's Bender. Hey.
I have unironically seen people be like, once you get autonomous robots, they'll be able to sit down and use my keyboard and mouse and type stuff into my computer. It's like, man, you were taking that like spaces are designed for humans way too far.
Yeah.
You can just get your computer to do that.
Yeah.
Do you find how because we talk with small businesses and people in an overlapping space too often, and a lot of the time the return on time has to be really quick, right? Like you can't say, look, if you introduce this new process and you spend 6 months learning it, then in 2 years you'll be 80% more efficient, right? They want something that's going to give them efficiency almost immediately because they've got a full week already. And if you're asking them to invest more time, they need to see that reduction in cost almost immediately. Do you find that that's like a barrier to rolling out some of these AI features, like the change in their workflow? Because some of these features are quite like big changes, right? It's not just like, hey, it does the thing you're already doing, but a bit faster. It's think about how you do your job different.
I think it's a great question, because if you look at it through any time technology shifts or any interface shifts, I'm used to muscle memory has me clicking that button or, typing in that field, and, we move it around for a very valid reason, but for people that's an adjustment and a change. And I think we've all had that. I even had the thing the other day. What was it? I forget which app it was, but it moved something, and I found myself just tapping on the thing where the button would be.
Oh, stupid Instagram with the messages down at the bottom in the middle. How dare they?
So there's this sense of like change management, and I remember this, from years ago. One of my favorite frameworks, every good architect loves a good framework, ADKAR, which is the change management framework. So awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. And it's the sense of like being aware of the changes is a really good start. Then building the desire for why do I want to change. And so I think to your point around I'm time poor, is this going to be something that unlocks more capability for me? Is this something that's going to help me reach scale? Am I going to do things I couldn't do before? The knowledge to be able to do the change and the ability to change, and then reinforcing it. And it's like oftentimes when we go through change programs, like in any organization, we can sometimes forget one of those steps or get stuck on one of those steps. So I think when I talk with accountants and bookkeepers all around the world, and they run this full, incredible range from people who can't wait to try the new feature, whatever the new feature is. Let's go. I've been on the Xero journey forever and everything's been amazing. Give me more. To those who are newer on their journey and actually maybe their processes are still, well, hang on, the way we did it was this, and how do I do it now? And I've been talking a lot recently, and some of my former colleagues in the sort of business architecture sphere would find that hilarious that I'm the one who's saying, what you need to do is model your processes. Like actually business process modeling is having its day, the flow charts and the BPMN, but it genuinely is. It was something that was, kind of very faddish, sort of maybe 15, 20 years ago. Now I think it's a critical precursor. How do I use these new capabilities that are coming online from a platform like Xero or from some of the other platforms that are out there? How do I leverage them? Okay, well, first question is, what are your key processes? And in those processes, what are the functional steps that are most conducive to being enhanced or augmented or extended by these capabilities that are coming online? And it sounds very, I admit, sounds kind of a nerdy way to do it, but I think taking that approach means that you're then focusing on your context, not the context of the accountant down the street or the small business down the street, your context. then you can have a far more focused conversation. Oh, that's not relevant. That's hype. That feature, that brilliant. Xero, give me that. And then I think that can really drive the usage in a different way.
That's awesome. I've actually, it's really funny that you start to bring that up because I've found myself making more flowcharts than I've ever made.
Nice.
Because there is this great desire to map something out because all of our processes are being kind of shunted in different ways.
Yeah, it's like you go to prompt something and then you realize, what are the steps to this?
Right. So the prompt I had up for some, I was speaking at some events we were running in Australia called our supercharged sessions, where we're supercharging and helping accountants and bookkeepers kind of look to the next stage. And as part of that, I was saying, if you're not super nerdy like me and you're not doing your flowcharts or your event-driven process chains, that's my preferred notation, then I'm like, use AI to help you. Like, give it a prompt and go, you're an expert in business process modeling. Help me model out the processes of my practice. Start with the ones that are common across most accountants and bookkeepers and ask me questions to clarify which are the ones that are specific to me, and then use event-driven process chains or flow charts or BPMN or whatever your preferred notation is. But what I was saying to the teams then was, if AI has taught us anything, it's that we're not actually as good at describing what good looks like as we might think. We get presented this curse
people are
box.
different, like they have strengths in different areas. So some people can picture the future but not how to get there. Other people can picture how to get there but not the future.
Yeah.
Some people can predict the bit just before the future. And so it kind of almost correlates to your personality and your ability to sort of accept unlikely possibilities.
Yeah.
And process mapping is like you could put that activity in front of anyone and I guarantee you it's a personality test.
Yeah.
Like it's way better than Briggs-Meyer or whatever. It's like, hey, map out this process. How do you think this happens?
Wouldn't it be cool if there was some kind of like AI memory that could kind of act as the hub and spoke, and it's got everything in the middle, the context and the memory, but it's going out to different people in a group and getting their individual prompts and then collating it into that kind of like synthesizing different people. I mean, you could do it in a manual way, but
Yeah, I'm
I think
sure.
it's a job. I think that's a job. Like, yeah.
But I'm sure that, like in Anthropic and OpenAI, they introduced memory reasonably recently on an individual basis. I'm sure they're looking at like, how do we do like
Shared
institutional memory or team memory?
Yeah.
And then the problem is going to be people don't operate like Google's circles or whatever they called it, right? Like it didn't take off as a social media network thing, but it had like a better model of people's social interactions, I think, than something like Facebook does, where everyone's your friend, where you have like these overlapping social circles. And so you don't have that same problem with AI, where it's going to have to guess from your context when you're talking to it, are you currently in your family social circle? And so it should use your family memory.
One-on-one or
So and to link that from Xero's standpoint, it's like the financial context, which is really what Xero has been about, right? From as long as you've been using our platform, that's what we've been helping do, is enrich your financial context. And so whether it's through Jax, Just Ask Xero, which is our generative AI.
another shout out to the marketing team.
Jax, that was great.
So
great.
good.
Or
there's
whether
got to
it's
be a basement Jax overlap going on there.
when you use Jax,
just
it's
an
a
accountant
Easter egg, that kind of like it plays out some drum and bass. I like that.
Yeah.
I'll take that suggestion back down.
Please do.
I'll raise that.
If I see a TVC with Xero and Basement Jax in the background, I will be cheering.
If anyone can afford the license,
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like trying to find ways where that context, that financial context that you've enriched, that you've gone through with the extra data, the extra signals that you know about your business. That's why things like, the Anthropic partnership, or our ability, why we think we're kind of net winners in this AI space, is because that becomes really valuable, becomes really important for you. It's not something that's hallucinated. It's not something that's, mostly there. It's your context, and it's been worked on with you and your trusted advisor, which is your accountant and your bookkeeper. And then if we can augment that, if we can extend that and add extra value to that, that's the play. And I think that then means you're in control of your data, your information, and you're getting the best insights you can.
I know that was one of the issues that lawyers have had with the introduction of things like Gemini and Copilot across Docs and Office and things, right? Where as a service provider to a bunch of different organizations, some of the things that you're doing are your institutional knowledge or your practices knowledge. And so you want to reuse that across your interactions with all of your different clients. But some of the knowledge is specific to that client, and you're legally barred from using that knowledge for any other client, right? Like the most extreme example is a conflict of interest where you've got some knowledge from some case you were doing with some client. You're not allowed to use that knowledge as evidence in another client's case or whatever, right? So do you find, like, for accountants, there's probably similar, maybe not quite so stringent laws, but for your accountant practices where they are working with a lot of different organizations, do you find that there's a similar sort of problem integrating AI where you've got to isolate the context that's specific to the practice from the context specific to the organization they're working for?
Yeah, so if I think inside of the context of Xero or Jax, it's always constrained to the organizational context of the person who's logged in or the person who's asking the query. And so there isn't an ability for it to then go, oh, you know what, over here when I was talking with ABC Limited, so there's none of the ability for that. I think also when you talk with accountants, back to the process conversation, there's certain processes around closing the year end where you go, oh, that's the same for everyone. I'm like, no, the end result is the same for everyone, but the process for how they get there might be quite different. My accountant sends out a checklist every year. In fact, I just got the checklist for the end of financial year checklist, and here's the things that they call to attention. One of the things I look through that, it's like 9 pages of stuff, because it's all their different kinds of clients. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not in a farm or a business, the family stuff. Okay, let me go to that. And so they'll have things that make their practice theirs. And so again, one of the joys of the job has been going around the world, meeting accountants and bookkeepers in different ways. Before I did that, before I was at Xero, my understanding of accounting was kind of high school, university accounting, right? Just debit and credit and, double entry, and accounting is accounting. And then I go meet these accountants and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're all walks of life, all different kinds of backgrounds. They become more than, for a lot of people in small business, they become more than numbers people. They're trusted advisors, they're counselors, they're friends. So there's all this extra context that you're never going to capture in a system, and you shouldn't try to. But what you want to try and do is then say, okay, great, we've figured out what we need to do next. How do we now go forward on that? And can we provide the right insights to assist that conversation? Can we automate away some of the toilsome tasks so they've got the time to focus on the things they want to do? Like, that's how we sort of think about it, is how do we help with the interaction between accountants and bookkeepers, people in small business, to unlock whatever they want to be trying to unlock.
One last.
Yes, you guys.
So
You do your last, and then I'll do my last.
So LLMs and creativity, we were talking about this, right? And I was always kind of curious, you've always heard this term, the creative accountant. So obviously Xero's shadow product is called Xero, and it's a very creative LLM. There's a lot of judgment built into process. And actually the world kind of rotates on effectively non-compliance. Like, if we were to sort of take all kinds of contract and legal stuff, there's a lot of room between what is black and white and interpretation and kind of people being people on the day, right? Like, probably the most common example that everyone might be able to relate to is your mortgage broker. Like, if you dealt directly with the bank has to hold the rules black and white. If you deal with the broker, they're able to kind of ask a lot more questions and a lot more freely because of the duty of disclosure, to then be able to paint a more realistic picture and set expectations accurately with the bank, right? There's that intermediary step, but there's a lot of soft judgment in between all of that.
So what we've got with AI, with these capabilities, is, well, AI itself is about mimicking human intelligence. It's not the same as having human intelligence, and it's definitely not the same as having human empathy and some of the other components that make the true human experience. I think, we're on a podcast called Human in the Loop. There's an element of having humans in the loop for some of those decisions, even if the decision itself looks like it ends up with debits and credits, right? Ones and zeros just for business. And you go, okay, I can see where I end up, but to get there, that journey, is a whole bunch of questions. And it's a matter of, yep, that rule applies, but only in these situations and this contingency. So you've seen examples of approximation, where I can ask a question generically, businesses like this, where would that fit? That's totally different to then sitting down with a person who has watched your business grow from the beginning and has been there with you and understands what's going on in your life, and can then provide the advice, like as in proper financial advice, It's just trying to power them with the right kind of insights. So I think that keeping the human in the loop in modern business and accounting becomes more important.
Is that them bringing the context to the table? And what happens in 20 years when the context is pumped by machines?
Will we ever get to the point where all of the necessary context can possibly be pumped by the machines? Because there's going to be some aspects, we were talking before about world models, there are some aspects of where there was no ability to record that context. It's intuition, it's gut feel, it's emotional. And in that situation, can we get to a point where all of that is provided? When you say, well, how much of business on the face of it looks like a solvable problem? It's supply and demand. It's, products in, products out. It's very, very simple. It's not simple at all. Like below the surface is a whole lot of complexity, particularly for people in small business, when the nature of the business and the nature of personal, those things blend and blur quite a lot. I think about, I've said to a few people, I've tried this out. We talk about human in the loop. We talk about it as a governance process, having humans involved in the loop where AI makes total sense. For some things, though, it's about having humans at the heart. There are some processes, there are some things where actually it's about the human experience, and the nature of having humans at the heart of that is more important than potentially some of the other trade-offs that come with that, the efficiency gains of productivity. Now, being selective where that is and being really clear on what those things are is, I think, the challenge that's in front of us more broadly, because now we've got a bunch of loops that we can put the machines in, which we didn't have until recently. Doesn't mean we should. And so I think asking where that fits is, I think, a really important question.
There is quite a pressure cost to taking humans out of especially those judicial loops, though, right? And that's going to be something we'll have to deal with. A lot of our laws are designed to assume some flex through inconsistent enforcement, right? Speed limits are an obvious one, right? I try and stick to the speed limit as close as I can, but I have gone 110 to get past somebody who will do 70 all the way until you reach a passing thing and then speed up to 102 just because, I don't know, they feel safer on that passing lane, right? And so there is slop built into there is an assumed slop built into our legislative frameworks, but we are now able, in many cases, to enforce these continuously and persistently. And so there are spaces, where your speed is continuously tracked and any infringement will result in...
Yeah, this is the thing, like man versus machine and CCTV person versus machine. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I got this fine for one of my lost BMWs. It's actually lost. I don't know where it is. I gave it to my mechanic. He stopped replying to my texts. It's a BMW. It's hardly on the road anyway. But I get this a letter from Auckland Transport, and it's got a photo of my BMW parked on the wrong side of it's an old Beamer, parked on the wrong side of the road facing this way. And it's like $70 infringement for, parking on the wrong side of the road. It's a safety concern. But then there's a concrete barrier on the other side of the vehicle, meaning that, it will be impossible for, it will be very hard for a car to collide with the car parked.
Yeah.
And also there's like a tree right behind the car as well. So like the human argument would just be like, this is probably not a safety issue. It's or not a safety issue as that law was contemplated, but they've used a machine to pick up this one discrepancy that's occurred and, applied the law to it.
Yeah.
And now the $70 versus like arguing with Auckland Transport to kind of turn that over.
You don't need to argue. Put the photo into Claude and have it your rebuttal.
I did all of that, and they were just like, nah. And,
well, at least they found your car.
Yeah, I don't think I went to get it. It wasn't there. And then my mechanic, he was on the thing, and he was like, hey, you should pay the fine. I'm like, what the? Where's my car?
The cost pressure, especially in that secondary check loop, I think is something we'll have to because there was a famous case, I think in the UK, where somebody had like a knitting personalized number plate, and they got sent a fine for driving the wrong way on a one-way street in a different city they'd never been to. And they said, I've never been to that city, send me the photo. And they sent a photo. It was a lady walking down the sidewalk with a sweatshirt that had I love knitting printed on the sweatshirt. And so she sent the photo back and said, this is clearly a person, not a car. And whoever was at the other end said, no, appeal
Wow.
rejected, you were driving the wrong, and she had to go to court to get it overturned, right? Like, because obviously there's just no human, either it's a human that's paid cents on the instance to just churn through these as quickly as possible. And so, yes, there's a human in the loop, but it's a human incentivized for throughput, not for quality. Or it's just AI all the way down.
I think being able to look at these processes, like looking at them through the lens of, hey, this process, this law, this regulation was actually built by humans for humans, and building in an element of slack around enforcement or the other things that you were saying, I think is, okay, that's where we were. Now we're here. So the car can monitor all the time the speed you're going at, or Internet of Things can give me all this sensory data. CCTV cameras can tell me exactly how long you were parked in that spot. So does that then mean that we, again, back to what kind of future do we prefer? We, the humans, can go, okay, let's have a look at these laws again. Let's have a look at these processes, because they were set up for a certain amount of operation, a certain amount of slack in the system. If that slack of the system is now being removed, now let's have a look at the process and see if it's something we want to change.
Thought we were being uplifting, but if we're saying we are reliant on politicians to do anything,
No, we're relying on people.
We are at time.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask one last question to round us out then, to tie this all together, because you're a bit of a framework and acronym fan. Is that fair to say?
Sure, yes, yeah.
Have you got one particular framework or model that you're pulling on a lot at the moment to kind of like work through AI value creation, or just you said one when you guys were on a panel together last year,
Yeah.
and I wrote it down.
Shamrock?
It wasn't Shamrock?
Well, I'll give you Shamrock.
Okay, give us
So
Shamrock.
Shamrock is my terrible approximation of the scientific method. So I'm using it a lot
You
because...
have to do this in an Irish
Here we go.
accent.
This is how it works. An Irish
Go
accent.
on.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So we use what's the one verb that gets used a lot with AI or any emerging technology is experiment. We're experimenting, right? And so I say, and I'm not trying to trigger anyone, go back to like high school science, to whatever level you took it to, and we all learned the scientific method, right? And I come up with an acronym to summarize it. It's like, what's the scope of this experiment? And then what's the hypothesis? Like, what do I think this is going to be? What is true or not true about the situation? And then what's the ask, or if you want to be real technical, the apparatus? What's the stuff I'm going to use to test that hypothesis? And what's the method? What's the process I'm going to go through in order to try and gather data to figure out the A or nay? And then the rock part is the results and the observations. Those two things aren't always the same. You get the hard data, the quant and the qual. And then the conclusions that I've been able to draw. Hey, the hypothesis is true, the hypothesis is false, it's inconclusive, I need to do more research. And then the K was because I'm trying to make it Shamrock, was like key results, the key data, the key points that I want to really draw attention to.
That might be a Guinness World Record.
There's a sense of like, with taking that approach, taking a scientific method approach with any new technology, when it's so exciting, and I'm right in there. Early adopter, how do I try it? How do I use it? You are not really experimenting, you're playing. And playing is, I think, a totally valid activity, but you don't expect data and results to come from playing. So I keep coming back to, when we're looking at experimenting, we're looking at testing something. What's the actual hypothesis we've got here? And do we have the method that's going to test it? What are the results, observations? Oh, wow. Okay, great. Now let's go back and revisit, because things are moving and changing so fast. So Shamrock, that's probably the one I'm coming back to quite a bit.
I love it. I love it.
you could just spell conclusions with a K, and then it would both be Shamrock and annoy everybody.
Thank you so much, James, for coming on Human in the Loop, for advocating for humans in the loop. And congratulations to Xero for 20 years. When you think about where Xero is now, talk about a year to take the win and look at the legacy. I'm sure there'll be some fantastic stories from the company coming out over where it started to where it's ended up and where you will be taking it in the future.
Thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure to have a chat with you all. And I think, yeah, it's exciting times for Xero. It's exciting times, I think, for New Zealand. And I genuinely do think it's exciting times for the world. It's just a matter of shaping the future that we prefer rather than sitting back and seeing what happens.
Wonderful.